Welcome to episode 461 of Cinematary. I'm your host, Zach Dennis, and I'm here with
Andrew Swafford.
Reid Ramsey.
In today's episode, we're going to be continuing our David Cronenberg series with 1999's eXistenZ. eXistenZ.
How'd you say it last week? I haven't listened yet.
I probably said it wrong.
I like how the very first thing that happens in the movie is somebody telling you how to pronounce the title of the movie.
It's honestly helpful. Very helpful.
They should do that in all movies.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, do they do that in I've never seen the movie, but do they do that in Koyaanisqatsi? Is that
well, you do hear them chanting Koyaanisqatsi. That's
okay,
like the
good.
first audio bit. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I need something like that in most movies. But in part one, we're going to be going through movies that we saw this week. We have all relatively new releases, so
yeah,
we're on top of the zeitgeist today. I mean, Andrew chickened out of talking about the Eras Tour movie, but
hey,
we're
never
relatively.
Say never. If we need to fill time,
is that a song
talk about the Eras Tour? That's a Justin Bieber song, I believe. That was the name of the Justin Bieber concert.
Documentary reference, though, to slide in.
Yeah. I'm more of a Connor for You kind of guy instead of Taylor Swift. Equal rights really changed my view on things.
Inspirational. So brave.
All right, well, I'm going to kick things off with the Palme d'Or winning film, if that's moves the needle for people.
All the can heads.
All the can heads get crazy. Palme d'Or winning Anatomy of a Fall. So this movie, it's directed by Justine Triet, and it stars Sandra Hüller from Tony Erdmann or The Zone of Interest, which Andrew and I talked about from TIFF.
Mm-hmm.
Really having a moment of her just kind of, having struggles and questions in a marriage this year for old Sandra. I did see somebody say that they probably should have cast her in the lead role of Tar over Cate Blanchett, which is tough because Cate Blanchett's really good in this movie, or good in that movie. But I could see it. She's really good. Sandra Hüller, good actress. That's my hot take coming into this. Pretty much the gist of this movie. She is living in this kind of secluded mountain chalet with her husband and their son. And the movie opens and she's giving this interview to this reporter. And it's just kind of this long sequence of them kind of talking back and forth. And it's less like an interview there. She's kind of flirting. It seems like she's kind of flirting with the reporter and, kind of diverting away from the questions, wanting to talk more about like the reporter herself and things like that. And then and I'm not making this up, an instrumental version of 50 Cent's the 50 Cent song PIMP starts just blasting across the house, and is just ricocheting around the house to the point where she's just like, yeah, let's not do this interview. Like, we'll do it another time. They like reschedule, but and don't worry, like that song becomes like the drum beat of this movie, because you assumed with this Palme d'Or winning French, courtroom / marital drama that 50 Cent's PIMP was going to lead that, like be the headline song for that. Like, that all made sense. But anyway, so the song is just blasting. Her husband is upstairs working, playing the song, and she sends the reporter away. So a little bit of time moves past, and the son like goes outside and is walking with their dog. He's like partially blind, which they don't really like emphasize really at the beginning, I guess, other than assuming that this dog is a seeing eye dog. But he's on this walk with the dog. They, you have this sequence of them kind of walking around near the house and then coming back. And when they come back, the father is laying in a pool of blood outside the home. It looks like he's fallen out of the window. And that just kind of sets off the chain of events that go from there, because the whole incident is investigated, and it's found that he could have fallen out, but it's of the window just on an accident, but it seems unlikely. So that the police are trying to figure out whether he fell out accidentally or was pushed. And Sandra Hüller's character, I think her name's also Sandra in the movie. She is the main suspect for this investigation, and that's kind of the rest of the movie is like partially like I would say a lot of it is like courtroom deposition drama, which I don't know. We got a little bit of this in a film from last year, which I liked a lot better than this one, Saint Omer.
Saint Omer, I think, is a 2023 film.
Is it 2023?
I have it on my list. I think it premiered in America in 2023.
Cool. All right. So great movie from this year that I liked, Saint Omer.
Yeah, it's great.
But also just a French courtrooms are fucking crazy movie. This one is like peak French courtrooms are fucking crazy. I don't like, let me just an aside from like the plot of this movie. Like it is like absolutely wild to me that like you have the person who is testifying on the stand, and then you have like the defense, and the prosecution, and they're just like, there's no like, there's a little bit of like, it's your turn, but it's just kind of like, it's honestly just like pelting like in the middle, and like they're just standing there in the middle of it, just getting, and like it's honestly just like insane. Like there's just people talking over each other.
Yeah,
people
it's like the defendant is being interviewed by a bunch of judges at once.
Yeah, and then like the defendant, like she's like answering questions while the person who's like the witness is or the expert or whatever is on the stand. It's wild. Like it's just anarchy. It's hard. You can't like you understand why France has had its historical moments where it just goes off the rails.
Our court system though, perfect, no problems.
Yeah, we have no issues in our court system.
No notes.
So let me just tell you, there's all the notes that we have on your court system.
Get it together, France.
I say it more like not as a criticism of the system itself, more it just threw me off because I'm like, what the hell is going on? Why is that person talking? That's more where it was just I'm used to American court system where I'm just like, there's like a procedure in place, You could never have a few good men, or a moment, like a few good men moment in the French court. That would be happening 5 minutes in by somebody like 3 rows back in the audience going like, what are you talking about? The hell? But anyway, so a bulk of the movie is like set in the courtroom with like people, and then a lot of it is very like procedural. So it's a lot of like police investigation, a lot of like lawyers going through. Because as Sandra's lawyer says to her, it's like it's not necessarily about like the truth of what happened. It's about like what they're gonna believe, because you never really get a clear picture of like, yeah, she pushed him out the window, or oh, he fell out the window. You never get a clear picture of that. But it kind of just, it's a very like obtuse movie. It runs 2.5 hours, which I didn't realize until 2 hours in. I'm like, we're still going, like, just choose something on her. Like just choose. But so, and for a lot of like the first hour and a half of the movie, you can't really like get a sense of like, well, one, you don't get a chance to like hear from the husband until about an hour and a half to 2 hours in. You don't hear a word from him. He's died at the beginning, and there's not like any like flashbacks or anything happening. So you don't have like any of those moments where you're going back to sequences and seeing things played out, whether it's from the kind of objective perspective of whatever expert or police officer or lawyer or whomever is talking, or like her perspective, or like you're never getting like some subjective point of view. Like you just don't hear from him.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Does he die because he was blasting 50 Cent's PIMP?
It might be. They never get to the bottom of that.
Okay.
It's not even the act. It's an instrumental version. Let me just continue to emphasize it's the instrumental version. Which is, it's really great to see in the credits, when you see like music featured and it just says 50 cents PIMP. But, and so like, because it's so, I saw somebody like kind of comparing it to like the proceduralness of something like Oppenheimer. I don't really buy that. Yes, they're both procedural movies, but this one is like, because of like it pretty much is, it's like it's pretty much just like a trial of a marriage. It's just like, let's take a marriage that probably had its issues, and both sides had their problems that they brought into the whole thing, and let's put that on trial. And it's a tough watch because of that, because you're just like, because for a lot of the movie, you're just kind of getting her in a defensive mode. And then halfway through the movie, this piece of evidence is unearthed, that is brought to light, that like provides not necessarily his perspective, but like a kind of a window into, one argument that this couple had. Which is kind of a fascinating scene to watch, because one, you're finally not like marred in like minutia, like the minutia of like court proceedings or police proceedings or what, like you're it's all like, that's all going away. It's just these two actors like acting out this sequence as this married couple. And it's very like, it's not necessarily coming from his perspective or her perspective. It's just like, this is what happened. And that's honestly the most compelling part of compelling piece of the entire movie, because a lot the rest of it is just in this very like obtuse, like you can never really sink your teeth into, who was really right or wrong, which is, I get it, is the point of the thing, that, everybody is bringing all their own different, not just biases, but just all their different, like just humanity to moments that kind of influence their, all their faults and positive, like all of this stuff is just all kind of, an amalgamation of two people who are together and trying to make, this work. And so, but at the same time, like that left me just kind of like somewhat cold, somewhat, like, again, like I couldn't really latch on to this movie because, because it's so like much, like very much investigating, this couple and like what it takes, like what a marriage is type thing. And not necessarily that it would have been better to like take a side in it. Honestly, like a good comparison I thought of, vastly different kind of mode, but like something like Gone Girl, where it's also like you're getting like you're getting just like insight into this fragment of this marriage that, is like completely like zeroed in on by, there is this kind of media circus around this case that's happening in this movie, because Sandra's character is the celebrated author and they bring this up in the case, that like has taken pieces of her life to like create these novels, and is very like in tune with what's happening in her life, being built into fiction. And so like, honestly, I saw more of a parallel with that. And thinking about it in that case, I liked Gone Girl more, because at least, whether you agreed with the perspective that it took or not, it like gave you something. It like made you feel something by the end of it. It made you feel either, at the end of Gone Girl, you just kind of feel like, like it's just trapped.
Gone Girl, by the way, rewatched that like month and a half ago. That movie holds up extremely well.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Extremely good movie.
Because like at the end of it, it's just like it leaves you with this just very like kind of like, it's like satisfying, but like satisfying uneasiness that you like by the end of it, you're just like, damn, like This one really doesn't leave you with that. It just kind of leaves, and I don't really know what feelings I was left with, what I was supposed to feel. Like I don't feel like I had anything pronounced that I felt, and so
why do you think it won the Palm?
It's such a like prestige actor movie, like on it, like Sandra Hüller's fantastic. Like it's so like it's like prestige to the capital P. It's in that respect, it's so acted. It's very like tightly written. It's very like professionally directed. It reminds me of a conversation that Darren and I had earlier this year about Past Lives, that movie where it's like technically like with the directing and like all of that stuff is like fine, like there's nothing wrong with that, but at the end I'm just kind of like I wanted to feel something. I wanted like I wanted to like feel some sort of emotion out of it, and I didn't. I definitely felt more out of Past Lives than I did this one, but this one just kind of left me going like as like if you're looking at it like in an academic sense, if you were like academically looking at it through like a cinema studies lens, you're like, this has a lot of facets that I can cite for my paper. But if you're like, hey, I'm looking for a rollicking good time on a whatever like on a Thursday evening, and I want to engage with this award-winning film, this just didn't leave me with that. So Anatomy of a Fall, I think it's going to be in that awards fair and things like that. Like I said, it's a very well acted movie, but I don't know. I was going to say that the husband got, was the lucky one. He got to bow out at the beginning.
Wow.
It's not that bad. I didn't hate it. It's just kind of afterwards I'm just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel about it. It just kind of was there. So
I don't want to say this as a rule, but I feel like generally over the past like 10 years or so, all the kind of new art house European films I see that are like up for awards, like that are at Cannes, or like I think like The Square or something. I'm like,
are you going to say Triangle of Sadness? Because I felt the exact same way as Triangle of Sadness, where I was just like nothing.
There's interesting ideas, but it is so cold that it's like it's not even worth trying to connect to.
I think that you could say that about Saint Omer, that it's very, very cold, but I don't know, something about that movie just works for me.
It has like a haunting quality though to it, and like the two main performances, especially the performance of the mother, like something, she just brings out something like very like haunting and celestial that like feels like above just the basics of the courtroom drama.
It feels like there's something larger than the drama going on.
Yeah.
In the movie. Yeah.
And I feel like it evokes that really well. There's none of that going on here. It's very just like obsessed with the procedures of like the systems, which I guess bores me.
Sure.
But yeah, Anatomy of a Fall. It'll be around.
Zone of Interest though.
Zone of Interest.
Go check that out.
Yeah, I need to check that one out.
Yeah, that's yeah. Andrew, I'm gonna toss it over to you though. So you can give us some feeling, hopefully.
I got some feeling for you. I had feelings while watching this movie. My movie that I saw this week is Priscilla, the new Sofia Coppola movie. I'm a big fan of Sofia Coppola. So many of her movies are among my favorites. Love Marie Antoinette. Really enjoyed The Beguiled as well. This is her first movie in a minute. Though she did come out with that movie On the Rocks in 2020 that went straight to Apple TV Plus. I don't know if anyone ever saw that.
No, we don't.
It's pretty good. Oh, sorry.
Is it? I remember watching.
It's not.
I remember watching it and immediately forgetting it.
I mean, I think that's fair. It's not. Well, it doesn't really feel like a Sofia Coppola movie, but it's like it's fine to watch. Like
that was the sense I got from like the marketing of that movie.
Okay, I'll give it another try. I'm sorry.
I would like to watch it at some point. I'm a Sofia Coppola completionist. But anyways, my first observation about Priscilla upon arriving at the theater was that it was very well marketed somehow. Zach tells me there's ads on TikTok for it.
Yeah.
But I went to go see this at Downtown West in Knoxville, which is like our quasi indie theater. It's kind of becoming subsumed with like the superhero bloat, like everything is. But I gotta tell you, I have never seen as many teenage girls as I saw in Downtown West for the screening of Priscilla. It was just madness in there. And I like am glad that this is a movie that is like not a franchise film. It is by like an auteur with a voice and is drawing a big engaged young crowd. Really, really cool. I think another part of it, aside from the marketing, might be the casting. Elvis in this movie is played by an actor from Euphoria named Jacob Elordi. I'm not sure if I'm saying that guy's name right, but he is extremely good in Euphoria, and also like just the worst guy imaginable. So I think that casting him was definitely like a way to kind of tap into the Euphoria fandom, and be like a choice to make you sort of immediately project your feelings towards this particular guy onto Elvis, who, you know, does not come out of this movie looking good. And from what I understand, it is a much more accurate depiction of the Priscilla Elvis relationship than Baz Luhrmann's Elvis was. There was some critic who wrote a really good review of, I think it was a review of Priscilla. It might have been David Ehrlich, I don't remember, who mentioned that like in Baz Luhrmann's Elvis, one of Priscilla's most notable lines is her yelling, "I am your wife," because like that's kind of the only thing that movie kind of knows about Priscilla. This is taking a very, very different approach. It has an extremely limited POV. It unlike Luhrmann's Elvis, which is like mostly concerned with Elvis's stage presence and like his abilities as a performer. This movie spends basically no time on stage. You see a little bit of a televised performance as people are watching it, but aside from that, you are just seeing Elvis in his personal life, and we really only see Priscilla with Elvis. Like her story starts, her very first scene is somebody coming up to her in a diner and inviting her to a party that Elvis is hosting. Like that is kind of when her life begins, according to this movie, which, by the way, is based on Priscilla Presley's memoir. And Priscilla Presley was an executive producer of the movie. So this is kind of why I'm assuming this is a much more accurate picture of what happened here.
It's interesting because I think this is also like the Elvis estate had a bunch of issues with it.
I imagine they would.
Yeah.
Very, very unflattering portrait of Elvis, which I'll get into in a minute. But you know, to again like circle back to the limited POV of this movie, Sofia Coppola is a director who's very interested in like people looking at stuff, and specifically like women looking at stuff. One of the hallmark shots that cross all of her movies is like a woman looking out of a car window. We're kind of seeing what she's seeing reflected in the window. So this is a movie that's very much from Priscilla's POV. One moment that kind of stood out to me along those lines is an early scene in that same diner I mentioned earlier, where a friend of Elvis is asking Priscilla's dad if Priscilla can go to this party because, you know, she's 14. It's understandable the father would not want her to go to the party of a 24-year-old, pop icon who has women throwing themselves at him all the time. And during this conversation, it's not just a reverse shot of like Elvis's friend, Priscilla's dad. A lot of it we're just watching Priscilla's face and like her eyes move back and forth as she like listens to these men decide what her future is going to hold, which is just so representative of kind of the dynamic of this movie, where Priscilla herself really doesn't have a lot of agency or voice. And the initial scenes that she has with Elvis are just like fleeting. They're tantalizingly brief. There's all these really abrupt cuts, which kind of stands out to me as somebody who's very familiar with Sofia Coppola's editing style, which is generally very patient and kind of like willing to let the characters just sit and reflect on things after they happen. And there's these scenes also of Priscilla like walking away from some of her experiences with Elvis, or like walking away from that initial invite to Elvis's party. And you just see so much on the actress's face. The actress, by the way, Priscilla, is played by a woman named Kaylee Spaney. I've not seen her in anything before this, but she is incredible. She has very little on the page to say, because her character, again, like has so little of a voice, but so much of the character's interiority is reflected through her eyes, her facial expression. The facial expressions, you can tell she's repressing. She's kind of having to present layers of emotion because of the way that her character is sort of expected to behave, both by Elvis and just kind of the general broader world. And one thing that's true about this movie, that's true about a lot of Coppola films, is that they tend to be about these extremely privileged women in what critics often call gilded cages. And this one is somewhat unique in that we kind of see that woman be lured into the cage. And at first she's like very enthusiastically in favor of getting in the cage. And then for a very long time, a very long stretch of the movie, she's like trying to convince herself that she likes it there. But eventually that cannot really, that's not sustainable. So Elvis in this movie, as I've kind of been alluding to, is what the kids call a male manipulator, or just like an abuser. It's a movie about an abusive relationship. Like I said, he starts pursuing her when she's 14. He's 24. He's initially very, very careful about what he's seen doing with her. In several of their initial meetings, he asks her, they're in like a public party space, and he asks her to go to his room, and he's going to meet her there later. Like, he doesn't want to be seen walking up the stairs to his room with her. He's very aware of the optics of the situation. He strings her along for years until like he is legally allowed to have sex with her. And I think like kind of withholding certain types of touch and affection during that time, because he knows that it like is keeping her hooked on him. Once they are like together, he insists upon her completely redesigning her look to match his personal preferences. It has this very Vertigo feel of like him taking her out to buy dresses, and like him insisting on specific colors and insulting her when he doesn't like the colors. And even the like beautiful costumes she wears start to feel like part of this cage that she's caught in. She's not allowed to work for herself, cultivate any friendships. So she has like essentially no support system outside Elvis. He cheats on her repeatedly. She like reads about it in the press. She finds like love notes, evidence of the cheating, and he repeatedly denies it. Anytime she like toes out of line even a little bit, he will threaten to leave her or like ruin her life in some way. And at the worst, he's also like throwing things and very violent with her. And despite all that, she just absolutely adores him through a very large chunk of this movie. And so we see him through her fawning eyes. And Sofia Coppola, I think, is great at depicting female desire and like looking at men the way that straight women look at men. I just recently watched The Beguiled, by the way, and like the way that movie ogles Colin Farrell in the first half is really remarkable.
Which is
Similar
fair.
things are happening. Yeah, very fair. Yeah, very attractive dude. And here, I mean, Jacob Elordi, if however you say his name, also very attractive dude. The camera loves him. Like we are seeing him the way that she sees him at her like most affectionate towards him. The good times in the relationship are depicted in these really beautiful montages with great needle drops. Though I do, while I'm speaking about needle drops, I should mention as a side note, it is unfortunate that Sofia Coppola has a short sequence in here set to the like disco cover of Thus Spoke Zarathustra, considering Greta Gerwig just like used the shit out of that needle drop in Barbie. Can't really be topped this year. But anyways, eventually like the bad parts of the Priscilla Elvis relationship sort of become her entire life. And there's this palpable sense of being trapped in the movie. So much of the movie takes place in Elvis's bedroom because Priscilla doesn't spend a lot of time in other spaces after a certain point, and it's covered in dark velvet and like there's padding on the doors. It starts to feel like a padded room in an insane asylum or a prison or something like that. And you are, as a viewer, just kind of like desperately wanting her to get out of here, to go anywhere else, interact with anyone who is not Elvis. And one criticism I could see someone weighing against the movie is the way that it doesn't give the audience much of a sense of who Priscilla was outside her relationship with Elvis. But I think that this has got to be an intentional choice on Coppola's part. Like, for one thing, Elvis makes Priscilla completely codependent with her basically before she has a sense to develop much of her own identity. Like, I have a coworker who likes to say that 14-year-olds aren't people yet. Like and I have experienced like teaching freshmen versus teaching juniors, seniors. Like, there's just so much more personality exuding from upperclassmen than like a 14-year-old who like is still kind of mentally just kind of surviving life. And also like this film is so intensely focused on the experience of being trapped in an abusive relationship that like once we're out of it, there's not really, the movie doesn't really have a purpose anymore. Like the character's free, movie's over. It's not Priscilla's life story in the same way that Baz Luhrmann's Elvis is Elvis's life story. It's just about the abusive relationship with Elvis. So it is really good. I think it is peak Leave Him cinema. I hope it inspires lots of women and girls to leave bad partners that they are stuck in relationships with. And honestly, like among my favorite Sofia Coppola movies. If you like what she does at all, I think that you will really enjoy this. Though I am seeing that some of my Letterboxd friends are giving it kind of middling star rating, so I don't know if that will be true for everybody. But for me, this is a real good movie, real good new work from Sofia Coppola.
I'm glad between this and Barbie, we have a you just need to break up with him, girl core that's going on this year.
Well, with Barbie, she's never really even with Ken. You know, he's just kind of assuming that she is.
The other, I haven't seen it yet, but I saw somebody talking about, the Elvis performances. And yeah, you got, Austin Butler and Elvis. You have whatever that guy's name is, which I looked up. He looks like a person. He looks like a person, like whatever. He looks like somebody who like they made in a machine to be in movies.
He has a very dramatic jawline.
He looks like he needs to eat some food. Elvis. Give him some food. But I think that the best Elvis performance of all time is still Jack White in Walk Hard, which is just him going and like talking about karate chopping Huey.
The scene where in this movie where Priscilla tells Elvis that she's pregnant, this guy has such an incredible line delivery. My entire theater burst out laughing. The line he says is like, "I'm gonna be a daddy," but the way that he says is like, "I'm gonna be a daddy. Something like that.
Sounds like
I
Danny
can't even do
McBride.
it like he does it. It's so funny.
That's who they should have had be Elvis. They should have had
Danny
Danny
McBride.
McBride. Would have been
So
great.
good.
You ain't my daddy. All right. Well, Reid, you're gonna take us home with a nice, fun, R-rated comedy for adults and children alike.
Yeah,
Not
both.
children,
Uh,
teens, college age
Yeah,
people.
for sure. It's kind of about being college age or
Yeah.
at least 18, 19, so that makes sense. But I'm gonna talk about No Hard Feelings, which I watched the other night on Netflix. It is directed by Gene Stupnitsky, which I assumed I had never seen anything by this director, but I have actually seen his one other feature, which was Good Boys, that like other
Oh, I saw
R-rated
that.
comedy a couple years ago. That one was pretty good.
Yeah, it's okay.
I thought it was pretty funny.
I feel like that's his career up to this point. Is like a bunch of movies that are just like, oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, I remember I saw that movie, like I had a
Yeah.
decent time and I left. Yes, that's it. But this is the movie. Honestly, Jennifer Lawrence does not do a lot. So like I feel like that was part of the story behind this movie was that
That's
Jennifer
true.
Lawrence like had made a movie again. It had been a bit.
In a movie that wasn't like her just like, hamming it up in a David O. Russell movie.
Yeah, exactly. So here she plays this like 30-year-old woman who lives out on Long Island in Montauk and is like really just kind of up against everything, like has very little money. Her house is being like not foreclosed upon, but like the taxes are so high she can't afford it, even though she like owns it. So it's like really, she's worried she's gonna lose her house because of property taxes. And in the beginning of the movie, she loses her car because of those same property taxes. So that is pretty much the setup. And she is a bartender and an Uber driver, so she really needs a car to make money. You know what? When I say it like this, it's kind of like the classic film Bicycle Thieves. But
No hard feelings. Basically, bicycle thieves.
basically Vittorio
It's
De
bicycle
Sica's
thieves with
Thieves.
more boobs.
Yeah, a few
Like-
more boobs.
Like
for sure.
if there was just a nude woman in Bicycle Thieves, it's the same movie.
Is there any full frontal in Bicycle Thieves? I can't remember. It's been a decade since I've seen it.
Honestly, there might be. It's Italy, so
That's true. Just like in the corner of a shot, I'm sure.
I'm gonna go on a limb and say there's no full frontal in bicycle thieves.
I'm gonna say maybe.
Some listener needs to rewatch that. It's not gonna be me.
No,
Some
don't
listener
fact
needs
check
to
us.
Rewatch that and let us know. No,
Just believe what you want.
But basically, Jennifer Lawrence is playing this like she's kind of the stereotypical Long Island like woman. Honestly, like the stereotypical like Philly woman too, like just like the kind
Yeah.
of hard nosed like.
She says what she
intense-
means.
Exactly. But in that way, it actually sets up Jennifer Lawrence to be pretty funny in the movie. Like it's
Yeah,
kind of
she's
fun
good.
to see her in a role like this and give a lot to it. Like she's clearly committed, which you'll see when you watch it. Like she's clearly committed to this role and like gives a lot to it, which is fun. So basically she loses her car, needs a car to drive, and this is the strangest setup for a movie, I feel like, but she sees a Craigslist ad
Yeah.
that is saying a rich family out on Montauk are offering to give a car to any like 20-something-year-old woman that's willing to date their son, so their son can like experience more of life. And like reading
she
between the
puts
lines,
that
they
on
want
Craigslist
exactly.
in 2023, like you're like, what?
Yeah, it feels like the setup of like an 80s comedy, like
It
an
does.
80s romance.
Absolutely.
Well,
but
and it's
not the
and it's
Craigslist
punk-
part, but like
and it's
newspaper ads.
punctured with the fact that Matthew Broderick is the dad of the
Yes.
rich family. So yeah,
That's true. But yeah, it feels very like not of this time, which I mean
True.
that's kind of a fun thing as
That's
well.
fine.
But yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. But basically she starts dating this like 19-year-old like and like it is pretty clear the parents like genuinely want her to like fuck him, like to do more than just date him, like show him everything basically before he heads off to college.
sounds a little bit like Priscilla. A lot of connections we're making.
I don't know about that one.
Well, she's like 30 something. He's like 19.
It's true.
I don't know. I'm looking more at the age numbers. Continue, Reid. Sorry.
No, you're fine. But
Bicycle thieves, Priscilla.
they want her to like show him experiences of the world before he goes off to
Yeah.
college at Princeton, because he's like a little like awkward, like he's the very typical like awkward nerdy uh like high schooler, and he's played by Andrew Barth Feldman, who I don't know what else he has done. Um,
He's
but
kind of fun in this.
yeah, he is. He plays the role well. Um, the movie is like pretty funny at points. My issues come mainly from like it tries too hard, in my opinion, to like toe the line between like really sweet and heartfelt and like really funny, and like funny to the point that it's like
Yeah.
so absurd. Like even the setup is so absurd, but there's like car chases and like this climax that's insane. It makes no sense how it all even like comes together. But then it's also trying to be like this kind of serious and sweet like relationship between them, which I think there's ways to do that, but I don't think they do it very well here. Like I believe their
Yeah.
relationship, but it's kind of whiplash. It's like suddenly you'll have this sweet moment, and then like the most absurd thing you'll ever like you can imagine happens, like him driving his brand new car into the ocean, essentially, like, and
Yeah.
like Jennifer Lawrence catching on fire, like shit like that
Well,
in the midst
like-
of like emotional connection. It's weird.
this movie definitely looks worse in the backlight of Bottoms, which is another
Mm.
movie with similar themes, but Bottoms 100% commits to the chaotic energy
Oh yeah.
and is wonderful for it.
Yep.
Like there are heart like we talked about it with Grace. There are like, you know, heartfelt moments in that movie.
Yeah.
It's not like trying to not accomplish that, but mostly it's trying to just accomplish chaos, which I appreciated.
Mhm.
This
Yeah,
one,
and
this
this
one
movie-
can never just fully commit to that chaos.
I know, and I think that's what just didn't work for me. Like it was like weird whiplash happening. But there are like some good gags, and some funny bits as well, like as some like interesting characters as well, but it's just not there's not like a whole lot there. And there's not a whole lot there in terms of like the ideas it has about their relationship aren't that interesting or like new, but then also it's just not so funny to make up for those things. So like it's like a fine movie to turn on, I would say, if you just want to like if you do want that chill Thursday night movie, Zach, and you don't want to watch Anatomy of a Fall, this one probably could
Here's your
replace it.
alternative.
Probably could replace it just fine, but it's not gonna leave much of an impact with you, kind of like Gene Stupnitsky's previous work.
Yeah. No, because I caught it a little bit before it got on Netflix. Yeah, I agree. Like Jennifer Lawrence is really great in it, and it is really fun to see her like actually like cutting. Like I wish this could be better, so that then she would maybe do more of these types of things, instead of like I don't know, doing whatever she's been doing lately. 'Cause
Yeah.
she's really fun in this, and like you can tell like she's having a good time. Like all the stuff that works is like generally because of her. Like she sells it.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. And I think also this movie was successful enough and like received well enough to where she could continue getting roles like this if she wants them, I'd say.
Yeah,
This is completely different, but do y'all remember how good Mother was?
yeah.
Jennifer Lawrence is so good in Mother.
She's good in most
Well,
movies
that's
she's
she
in,
just-
not all of them, but most.
You know,
Yeah.
speaking of like, hey girl, you should just leave him. Like maybe this
Mother.
is the beginning of well, that is in that canon as well. But like maybe she's finally gotten away from David O. Russell and Darren Aronofsky, and she can like have fun.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's what's happening here.
Yeah, because I'm
Um,
looking like at her filmography. The last thing she did was that movie Causeway, which was that indie movie that was very good, but it's like so downplayed.
What
and
was
like
it?
Causeway. Brian Tyree Henry was nominated for an Oscar for it. It was like an Apple TV, like buried on Apple TV, but it was pretty
Mm.
good. But it's
This
like
isn't even a bit. Read. I
deeply
have no
sad.
fucking idea what you're talking about right now. Causeway?
Causeway is last year.
That's a movie?
It's a movie.
A U.S. soldier suffers a traumatic brain injury while fighting in Afghanistan and struggles to adjust to life back home in New Orleans.
I got like honestly, I thought you were pulling my leg. I have no idea what that is.
But since Causeway, she's only made.
He
a
was
handful of
nominated for an
movies.
Oscar in it?
Yeah.
Man, this is like that Coda movie that was on Apple that allegedly won a
God.
Best Picture Oscar. Like, what
Wild.
do you like? That's not even a real movie. What are you talking about?
I think the moral of today's podcast is Apple TV Plus doesn't exist. It's not real.
I'm like, what is
It's just
that?
gonna be such a bummer.
Causeway.
For Killers of the Flower Moon.
I thought you were talking about like a causeway, like road infrastructure.
I mean,
was
that's
like,
what
kind
the
of
title
a
is referring
play
to.
on it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm so confused. Like you were talking about that, and I legitimately was like, "What is he talking about right now?" I feel like I'm pretty up to date on what's going on. I guess not, though. I guess not. My final thoughts on No Hard Feelings is go see Bottoms, which is a much funnier,
Bottoms
better
is
movie.
much better, much funnier.
Honestly, one of the best movies of the year.
Yeah,
It's getting a lot of hate like this week. Have y'all seen
Really?
that? Like tons of people.
Who are these people?
It's getting
who are
like a
these
weird
stupid
backlash
people?
suddenly. I don't know.
What's
it's getting a sudden
the
weird
substance
backlash.
of the critique? Do you
Yeah.
know?
I haven't read the pieces. I'm too lazy.
Eh.
But they're just I just see a bunch of critics like be like, I saw Bottoms, I hated it. Here's my piece. I'm like, okay.
Well, that's
go.
just like that's their job generally. Is
Yeah.
like it's, you got to get a couple of those out each year. All right, I'm gonna go look those up. But in the meantime, we're gonna take a quick break, and then we're gonna be back. We're all gonna be hooking in our body pods or whatever the hell those things are, and diddling with the little skin things to play a video game after this break.
Diddling with the skin.
And we're back with part 2 of episode 461 of Cinematary. In this part, we're going to continue our David Cronenberg series with 1999's eXistenZ.
Emphasis on the first syllable.
eXistenZ. I'm going to write it down.
Capital X. Capital Z.
Eggs. I'm going to literally write down the word eggs.
Eggs.
Stins. All right. eXistenZ. Fucking idiot I am. eXistenZ, written and directed by David Cronenberg. The film stars Jude Law, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Ian Holm, Don McKellar, and Willem Dafoe as Gas.
I wrote that down too.
Did you write that? It said and Willem Dafoe as Gas.
Yep.
I thought
that was in the
such a major
negotiations.
character.
There's a contract somewhere that says Willem Dafoe has to be identified and Willem Dafoe as Gas.
I kind of wanted to take a screenshot of it and then like make a meme where it's like you had a really you went and had a really spicy dinner, and then next thing you know, and Willem Dafoe as Gas. Anyway. Video game designer Allegra Geller has created a virtual reality game called eXistenZ. After a crazed fan attempts to kill her, Allegra goes on the run with Ted, a young businessman who falls to the role of bodyguard. In an attempt to save her game, Allegra implants into Ted's body the video game pod that carries a damaged copy of eXistenZ. Allegra and Ted engage in a series of experiences that blur the lines between fantasy and reality. The film's plot came about. This is the most insane ass. This is where it came from, but also the second best fatwa based plot. The film's plot came after Cronenberg conducted an interview with Salman Rushdie for Shift magazine in 1995. At the time, Rushdie was in hiding due to a fatwa having been put on his life due to his controversial book, The Satanic Verses. Rushdie's dilemma gave Cronenberg an idea of, quote, a fatwa against a virtual reality game designer, which is such a weird. I'm talking to Salman Rushdie about his fatwa. This is the idea that I got out of it. But this is second in terms of fatwa-based narrative plots behind, I think, the 10th season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. So it is what it is. Good fatwa content coming out of the old noggins these days. Cronenberg, in an interview with Spliced Wire on the technology of the film, said, quote, the technology I sort of sidestep in this movie. It's the metaphor. It's the drama and the meaning of it. And all of that, which is interesting to me, since I see technology as being an extension of the human body, it's inevitable that it should come home to roost. It just makes sense. I mean, I literally showed that in the movie with the pod plugged into the central nervous system. Technology is us. There is no separation. It's a pure expression of human creative will. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the universe. I'm rather sure of that. But we'll see if the spaceships come. And if it is at times dangerous and threatening, it is because we have within ourselves, it is because we have within ourselves, we have things with us that are dangerous, self-destructive, and threatening. And this has expressed itself in various ways throughout technology. The New York Times in 1999 said most films that explore the possibilities of virtual reality have some aspirations to sleek science fiction. Not David Cronenberg's. His eXistenZ has the oozing, throbbing, ghoulish hallmarks of other Cronenberg fever dreams, such as Naked Lunch and The Fly. And sometimes it even has enough coolly remote style to make them palatable. And then Roger Ebert in 1999 said, eXistenZ arrives a few weeks after The Matrix, another science fiction movie about characters who find themselves inside a universe created by virtual reality. The Matrix is mainstream sci-fi, but eXistenZ, written by Cronenberg, is much stranger. It creates a world where organic and inorganic are not separate states, but kind of chummy. Consider the scene where an oil-stained grease monkey implants a bioport in the hero, using a piece of equipment that seems designed to give a lube job to a Peterbilt. It's just a good line.
Sometimes tolerable was my favorite quote from those.
Yeah. On that note, let's talk about eXistenZ. I think it is, real quickly, it is kind of fascinating that this came out very close after The Matrix.
Yeah, easy to see why it has kind of been forgotten to film history compared to The Matrix, because it's like it's not The Matrix, but it's interesting.
It's not, but you got to figure, like, if you saw it, a couple months or a couple weeks or whatever after The Matrix, and The Matrix is like this big thing, and then this comes out, you're just kind of like, oh, like it's not the same, but it on the very superficial surface of I just saw The Matrix a couple months ago for the first time, and it like became this whole thing. It seems very similar.
Yeah. They have a lot of plot and thematic similarities, but they are exploring those things in completely different ways.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I agree. My point is, though, I also understand why it got lost in the shuffle.
Yeah.
Had anybody seen this before?
I have.
Okay. How was the second? Because Reid and I we're jumping into these things on the first watch. That was the second watch on this thing?
Good. I took so many pages of notes, just like writing down ridiculous things people said and like making connections between a million different things, because the movie is so interested in like making connections between video games and sex and technology and capitalism. And it just kind of feels like everything is like a metaphor for everything else. So I kind of like couldn't stop having thoughts while watching this movie. Very, very good rewatch for me. And it is a movie that relies so heavily on twists, but the twists are so like unpredictable and confusing by the end that I knew that like there were levels of reality that the characters, we were like not initially aware that the characters were in, but it wasn't so much that it like ruined the tension or suspense of the movie, because I didn't remember exactly how all the pieces fit together.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna ask, because like it kind of has like a like a Wizard of Oz curtain kind of thing going on near the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm curious, like how that plays, kind of going into it, knowing that that's the case. But I guess it's still.
Yeah, I think holds up in a rewatch for sure.
I think also I can't speak for a rewatch, but I think like by the time the twists start coming, they're like so rapid fire
Yeah.
and they seem so absurd that they then start losing meaning, like very purposefully, I think.
Yeah.
And like at least until the big reveal or whatever, like the curtain drop or pull or whatever moment, like I think like the twists like happen so rapid there and the lead up right to that moment that it's like, okay, well, nothing means anything. This was just like an hour and a half of weird reality like mashing. But then there's like, I don't know, then it drops. I guess we can spoil things, but I don't.
We can definitely spoil things.
Yeah.
And there is I don't know if you were alluding to this or not, but there is the character who kind of lampshades the fact that the twists are kind of like they happen too rapidly at a certain point that like the character themselves couldn't keep up with what was happening there.
Right, which seems very tongue-in-cheek and purposeful.
I like that this is how they like envision like virtual reality gaming, when a lot of it is just like I'm imagining like Wii tennis. like they're experiencing these whole realities, and like this very like you think of like the scene in the Chinese restaurant, or like when they're like in the like fish factory thing, and really it's just kind of like.
I also like it's the most David Cronenberg thing of all time, that like I imagine him pitching this movie like it's all VR, like it's all about gaming. I'm like, okay, it'll be like a normal controller, right? And he's like, no, it's gonna be this weird sack of flesh. Like,
dude, I love the flesh controller so much. One of my favorite aspects of this movie. My friend Cam, who comes on the podcast occasionally, has this saying about controllers, which is that a good controller should kind of they should have more flesh. Long live the new flesh controllers. No, but he says like a good game controller should disappear. You should not think about the game controller when you're playing the game. You should be completely immersed in the game world, and like your button presses should be just like extensions of your body. And I really like how this movie envisions like a game controller that like literally becomes one flesh with your body. And I think that we've kind of seen that trend emerge in video game controllers over the years. Like my favorite game controller is the GameCube controller, because every single button is a different shape. And you don't even need to really remember what those buttons are called. You just need to remember how they feel on your finger, basically. But there's also, like, more recently, the PS5 has what they call haptic feedback, where when you press on, like, the right trigger to shoot a gun in a shooter game, it, like, has a little bit of kickback to it. And it seems like, the trend in video games broadly is, like, more and more and more immersion. To the point where like a sort of photorealistic VR space, like this movie envisions, does seem like kind of like the logical end point of video games. It's also important to remember that like this came out in 1999, when like one of the bigger games of 1999 was like Donkey Kong 64. There was the type of realism that exists in video games now was so far away at that point.
Now we're just putting the stupid little like Oculus goggles on.
Yeah. And this, another thing that I feel like is kind of prophetic about this movie is the idea that we would just kind of, part of one of the games that they play in this is just like working on an assembly line, like pulling out fish guts to make more of these gaming consoles. And the people who are really spearheading the world of VR are like Mark Zuckerberg, who already owns these platforms that people basically live their lives on, Instagram and Facebook. And like what he really wants is for us all to just buy into the metaverse so that we can like go to work on our VR headsets and have like every aspect of our lives like trackable and monetized by the company. And so like I think it's interesting that David Cronenberg thinks about the advent of VR as like an inevitability and also as like a thing that has a sense of political urgency about it. Like there's like revolutionaries who are trying to stop VR from becoming.
He talked to Salman Rushdie and was like, hold on, y'all. This dude, hold on. Do you want to make something about, no. It's going to be about VR. Yeah. It took me a little while, but then I got into it because, like, quite honestly, like 90%, not even 90, pretty much the majority of this movie is nonsense. The whole movie is pretty much nonsense. Like once you kind of clue in that this is all just nonsense to a degree, like I don't disagree that like it does have like an overarching like point it's trying to make. It's dealing with like these different socio-political ideas. It's grappling with all these different ideas, but like the core of just like what's going on like in front of you on the screen is pretty like nonsensical. Like just because you think about like there's like straight up hilarious dialogue between Jennifer Jason Leigh and Jude Law.
Oh yeah,
that's just silly. It's just silly Billy, just silly dialogue that you're just like, do they really like write that and you're like, yeah, but also like you think of it in the context, not only just video games then, but even to a degree now, like just think of like a narrative for not like the best of the best games, but just like you're like a run of the mill, like AAA, like I just got finished playing the new Spider-Man game on PlayStation, and for the like highly entertaining, but like some of the dialogue in it, you're just like, this is just silly. This is just silly. This is silly nonsense. Like what are you talking about right now? And like you kind of have like I like that even though a lot of that like video game logic in the narrative isn't as to your point, like that kind of comes later as like video games really start to kind of develop over the next 23 years from 23 24 years from this movie coming out. It does kind of have that too, like where there is this kind of like, even though you want this immersion, like the speech itself and the language feels very very static to this artificial world that it's kind of constructing.
And there's also the presence of NPCs in that world who talk in like an intentionally stilted way and will only respond to you if you feed them like a line of game dialogue, which is how text-based adventure games operate. You had to like type in the right words to like get to the next step of your adventure.
They should add like the whole where you can like also flirt with the NPCs and stuff like that. Like they should have added that whole. Yeah.
I mean,
real Skyrim vibes going on in this one.
Yeah. I think even considering that though, and like one of the weird things about the NPCs is like revealed at the end, right? Like even those people are played by like real humans, we're led to believe, playing the game. But also it's given what we're saying and like the logic following a certain route, it's interesting that it seems like no one knows where this is going, like the creators included. Like for even when we're under the when we are believing that Jennifer Jason Leigh's character is the creator of this, she seems to have no understanding of where the game's taking them. And then we later realized that she wasn't actually in control of anything, like was not the true creator or whatever. But that guy also had no understanding of like where the game was going. It was all dependent on the people playing it, which I think is interesting because he's like the game had a really anti-game tone. And he's like, not what I expected, but it's such a heavy part of the central storyline that it's like, well, that had to have just like he had no clue what was going to happen when they started playing.
Yeah, I mean, it operates more like a tabletop game,
Yeah.
like Dungeons and Dragons or something, where the direction the plot takes is just up to each individual person, kind of like pushing and pulling it psychically in different ways. Whereas like video games are so programmed, you have like these very linear tracks that you're on, even as the game presents you with like the illusion of choice. But I don't know, with the advent of like AI, like generative stuff in games, I think that we are kind of seeing like more infinite possibilities unfold, and I do wonder if like we enter into like a Neuralink universe where people's brains are literally like wired up to these machines, if subconscious thoughts and desires will kind of weave their way into the way the game is kind of like doling out dopamine to you.
Well, it's definitely a whole different, it's going for a whole different thing. But you think of something like Ready Player One as like that's one where there is like a kind of central space where the person is like linking into the gaming universe of that one, where then you enter the kind of game universe and are interacting as this whole avatar, separate character thing, and is kind of engaging in that logic to a degree. It's just doesn't have flesh controls.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
no. Steven
the
really
visuals here
screwed
are
that up.
really like disgusting in a good Cronenberg way. Like they're deeply unsettling. Just like the flesh controller, like the weird little creatures that are existing and dying.
All the fish guts.
And yeah, tons of guts. The way people are killed is very, well, I want to say graphic, but not like realistic.
How have we not talked
realistic.
about the teeth bone gun thing?
That fucking gun.
Yeah, like
flesh gun with teeth bullets.
Yeah, hold on. There's like I think there was a specific name for it too. I can't whatever. But like, yeah, like it's these like for the uninformed. It's like it's honestly, I didn't like, out of all the stuff that could be disgusting in this movie, that really disgusted me. And I also just looked at it and it was like greasy and gross, and I'm like, I wouldn't want to touch that.
Oh, and when he's building it,
yeah,
in the
and it's
dinner
like
scene.
Yeah, and he's like building it. It's all like bones and like teeth, and then like they use it to shoot people. And that's like the least of the bad part about it. Yeah, I don't know what he was on when he devised that. Everything I can get behind the flesh controller, but I draw the line at the teeth bone gun.
Oh god.
I think it is appropriately gross that like they build these controllers out of like guts and organs and like teeth and stuff like that, in a factory that used to be dedicated to like raising fish and releasing them into the rivers, like as a conservationist thing. And now it's just dedicated to like harvesting organs so that like these tech companies can keep running. That is totally a thing that tech companies would do if all the tech we relied upon was like got its energy from like fish organs instead of like minerals in Africa that they can just enslave people to mine for them.
Well, like honestly though, like, so let me bring this point to fruition.
Go ahead.
You think about it now, a lot of like, textile industries, agricultural industries, a lot of those industries like flopped in the US and left a lot of predominantly kind of rural parts of many different states, like people jobless, like there just wasn't that, for the longest time. It's like you had that textile mill, whatever, in the town. Like that was the functioning heart of,
Or
how
coal,
green was
like
how
Appalachian
green was
mining
my
town.
valley, like all that kind of great shit. And then that stuff got pulled out, and because they went bankrupt or the industry fell through or things like that. And so then now, I think about like near where I am, you have a lot of tech companies coming in. You have a lot of even up in Raleigh, you have Epic Games, you have video game companies going in. And so like those are becoming now the Amazons, the things like that are becoming like the industries of said place, and kind of filling in where, so to parallel what the point that you're making, using the old mill that was used for farming trout and using that as like the main source of industry for wherever the hell we are, like it's been replaced by this more tech focused. And the downside of that is just one, not that it necessarily will go away, but like will continue to advance. And so like how much, at least around us, they're building all these like highly technical like EV car building, this is going to be the central industry of these rural counties. But you're like, yeah, give it 20, 30 years, and then they'll just fully automate it with robots, and then people will be on their ass again, pouring out of an industry.
And the way that factory and like the adjoining town looks like an old like company town, where people are getting paid and money that they can spend at the company store. It just like looks very kind of like people's entire lives are like a grind. And like grinding and farming is also like such a ubiquitous part of video games now. Like people just go in and like do these like very simple repetitive actions for just like see the number go up in like their in-game economies, that's been monetized to no end by game companies who are like trying to make their games into these like never-ending subscription experiences where you're doing like all these tiny little microtransactions that like are giving you the dopamine hit of like, I'm getting better at the game, but are kind of like you're just kind of working for the company store in a way, if you know what I mean.
Well, and like to go on a point that might not have anything to do with the movie, but like when it was this kind of like industry town, like even though like there was a collectiveness, like you were going to the company store, you were but it was kind of like everybody was in the same boat for the most part, unless you were like the foreman or above, like nobody's necessarily better off than the other person. They're all in the same boat. And like in this one, like farming and grinding and things like that, like in a video game, is similar. And you would think that there would be a collective experience behind that, but no, it's a very singular experience, because if you're farming and grinding more than the other person, like you're raising your capital above others, and it just becomes this whole system of like that whole thing, and that's what separates us, and that's why we're a divided nation.
There's one moment where Jude Law's character says, what is it? This is a game that's not going to be very easy to market. And Jennifer Jason Leigh says, but it's a game that everybody's already playing. And I think that what she's referring to is capitalism. Like just the fact that we all have to like go out and grind our little experience points,
cut our little trouts,
so that we can like, buy enough health potions to survive to the next day. It's everything is so like, tracked and quantified, and we are kind of deciding like who lives and who dies by like people's performance in the game, the work that you have to do.
I think that's what I kind of like about this movie is it's this movie has like we're all in a game, man. It's just like we're all just having to live this game in life. Like it has that energy just constantly without outwardly being that way.
In
Like,
a great way, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. Honestly, like missed opportunity. Like I just want a scene where Mark Maron is like talking about that, like in his voice. That would have been perfect. That made so much sense. We're all just a game, man. Just playing us like little characters in the computer, dude. I also like that, not that a David Cronenberg movie, again, from the 3 that I've watched so far, now 4. But like he really went like all out on having weird little dudes for this one. Let's open up the weird little dudes section.
Are you referring to Willem Dafoe as Gas?
Well, yeah, that's number 1. But like, so you have Jude Law and Jennifer Jason Leigh, who are pretty like straight laced, like non-weird people who are like, and this is peak like pretty boy, like Jude Law looks like he just came, like to a degree, looks like he just came out of Sunday school. But then he like litters the rest of the movie with just weird little dudes, because you got Willem Dafoe, who just is like king weird little dude, and he's great in this movie. Then you have Ian Holm, who just great weird little dude.
Is he the android guy from Alien?
Android guy from Alien,
Okay.
Bilbo from the original Lord of the Rings,
Right.
like just like peak weird little dude. You got Chris Eccleston, who probably most people know as the one of the Doctor Who's, but he's a weird little dude in that. He just kind of he's the guy who kind of introduces everything at the beginning of the movie, and just all the other little from the Eastern European guy at the trout factory to the waiter at the Chinese restaurant, like just weird little dudes just littering this movie, just being creepos. He really nailed it on this one. Honestly,
Also,
I was
despite
sad
the
that
fact
Willem
that
Dafoe
Jennifer
did not
Jason-
last that long.
And he mentions that too. He was
Yeah.
like, "Oh man, it's so sad that you only got a minute to shine."
Yeah.
I think for real though, if I were playing this game and like I show up to this big thing and it's 20 minutes of a game, but it feels like it's like days or a couple weeks of your life, like I'd be bummed as hell to not be one of the 2 people that actually have a role in the game.
They get to play the game.
Everyone else is in it for like maybe like 5 minutes.
But like I was thinking, I made the joke about Skyrim earlier, but it's kind of a similar experience where like Skyrim's a weird game where you have like all these other kind of side actors who's like sometimes have familiar voices, but then you have like Christopher Plummer and Max von Sydow in that game, playing characters. And so you're just like in this one, it's like you have Willem Dafoe and Ian Holm, like very accomplished actors in this. And you just kind of have like a bunch of other little random folks. I don't know. But just a peak weird little dude movie.
Even a non-weird, non-dude like Jennifer Jason Leigh has a weird ass haircut.
Yeah.
She has like these alternating columns of straight and wavy hair that is so bizarre.
Yeah.
And her name is Allegra Geller.
It's if you have allergies, you can just, take her to find some relief.
And all she wants to do is play video games with someone friendly.
Yeah.
She's just like, this gives my life meaning to play video games with people. Let me install a port into your spine so you can play video games with me. It'll just hurt for a minute. Let me show you my video game.
I also like that there was just so many scenes of people sticking their fingers in the goddamn ports in the back.
Yeah,
Oh,
he licks
God.
her port.
He licks her port.
Yeah.
And I was
he's
reading
like, I don't know why I did that.
Oh, it was the character.
I just had a compulsion to do that.
Yeah, you're just like, again, just like like honestly though, like strong video game. Like there is that one scene where they just start like making out, but mainly just like rubbing against one another. And you're like, yeah, it's a video game. It's like, it's like when you see a hooker in Grand Theft Auto, you're like, well, I have to. It's here.
And also the like killing people and not thinking about it because it's a video game.
Yeah.
Right. Zach, did you ever see that movie, A Glitch in the Matrix?
No.
Oh, it's about it's by Rodney Asher, the guy who made Room 237. It's about simulation theory. And
Wonderful.
it talks about how a lot of mass shooters actually believe in simulation theory because they believe like they are one of the only real people in the world, and that everybody else is like an NPC. And therefore, just like in a video game, it doesn't really matter if you kill NPCs, like they're not real. Which, by the way, a couple of years ago, there was kind of a trend going around my high school of teenagers referring to other people that they didn't like as NPCs, which I thought was really awful.
Yeah, I've heard the term. I'm really just having an NPC type day where I'm just existing. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
We'll just leave that with a pregnant pause.
Well, I guess the to bring it full circle, I do think that the idea of like existing in simulations, or the idea that we are currently living in a simulation, can kind of fill people with a type of nihilism that then gets expressed into violence, or any sort of like boundary crossing that would be unacceptable if we were treating people like full human beings.
Yeah,
the movie's fairly interested in that too. Like the scene at the dinner table when Jude Law's character is like, I really want to kill this guy. I don't know why. And she's like, well, you're going to do it anyway, so you might as well have fun doing it.
She's like, waiter.
Yeah.
And when she kills Jude Law's character, after she has killed Ian Holmes' character as well, she says, like, do I win? Do I win the game? And she does. Like then we like zoom out to the next layer of reality. Which is, and I think, hopefully an intentional connection to the fact that in most video games, like the way that you do win is you like kill everything in the game, which also makes me think about how like the U.S. military uses video games for recruitment. Like the Call of Duty games are very much made with the American military. Like in partnership with the American military, and the task of doing a drone strike is basically like playing a video game. So there's like a this like symbiotic relationship between the world of video games and the world of like militarized violence, that I think that I don't know if Cronenberg is interested in like the military aspect of it specifically, but definitely like interested in the violence video games question, which I think a lot of people dismiss offhand as like that's a kind of a an overly like conservative or puritanical way to like question video games. Like it goes back to the whole like Columbine era discourse of like, do violent video games make people violent? And Cronenberg has a whole movie about that basic premise in Videodrome. Like Videodrome is all about the question of like whether or not media like changes you or affects you. Like, does watching dirty movies give you dirty thoughts? And Cronenberg, despite being a huge proponent of dirty movies and violent movies, kind of comes down in the affirmative mostly, that like, yeah, like how could it not affect you in some way? Like, how are we not affected by all the media that we consume? And I think that he is very skeptical of like the amount of violence in video games, or just like the way in which violence can be sort of played with in a game, and the way that it can't be played with in real life, and how that kind of changes our relationship with violence.
Mm-hmm. Back to your point about the drones and video games, it's a whole subplot in Arrested Development where Buster Bluth is a skilled drone pilot.
True.
Because he thinks it's a video game. Any final thoughts on eXistenZ before we wrap it up and go back to reality?
I really like it. I feel like it makes sense, like y'all are saying, that it got lost. But I feel like in terms of Cronenberg's filmography, it should be a little more recognized. I think people like once you're going back and watching like Videodrome and The Fly and watching maybe his newer stuff, like you should also be checking this out. I had never like even like scrolled the IMDb page long enough to like think I should watch it. And I've seen a lot of his movies, but I just hadn't had much interest. But it's really good. Like I'm excited to rewatch it, honestly. So.
Yeah, Michael O'Malley recently did a really great review of Dead Ringers, which came out in 1988, in which he mentioned that movie feels like a transition point for Cronenberg into making movies that are a little bit more like, that have more like emotional stakes, and are more like psychologically complex on the part of the characters. And I think that that's true. And I really like, the 90s movies of Cronenberg that I've seen, this and Crash, which is probably my favorite Cronenberg film. And I think that he has continued to make like really interesting movies. Like, I don't think he is one of these directors who you can just kind of watch the big early hits like Videodrome and The Fly and feel like you've gotten the whole picture. I think that he evolves a lot as an artist, and I think that eXistenZ is a really strong movie from him. It just kind of has gotten lost, like we've said.
I don't know. It gives me real Naked Lunch Fly vibes. As somebody who's seen Naked Lunch and The Fly.
Someone who's only seen two Cronenberg movies.
Yeah. No, I really liked it. I dug it. Reid and I clearly were following along better than we did last episode.
Thank God for Michael last episode, like just being able to tell us everything we needed to know.
Bad.
And
yeah.
Also, he was very succinctly able to position like the sides of Cronenberg's filmography, I think. Well, for us, like this for me falls very much into like the camp of like Videodrome and stuff like that, whereas like Naked Lunch, he was saying, or is more like adaptations and stuff like adapting like works of postmodern writers and stuff. So
yeah,
thank God for Michael, honestly.
No, but this one I thought I really got into this one. This is probably my second favorite that I've seen out of my four.
What's your favorite?
Probably The Fly. I like that one. Brundlefly. I mean, how can you hate that guy?
And you haven't seen Videodrome yet?
No, it's not on the list.
Crash.
We're just following the list over here.
Man.
Over here in Zachland.
Also, you got to see Crimes of the Future, Zach.
It's so good. Crimes of the Future is amazing.
There's so much like sex surgery stuff in eXistenZ that feels like presaging Crimes of the Future.
Yeah. Well, next week on or next episode for Cinematary, it'll be our last David Cronenberg episode. Maybe I'll watch some past that, but we'll be ending with some, I can only assume, sex. With 2011's A Dangerous Method. So
another underrated Cronenberg joint.
Yeah, get some Michael Fassbender action as we could probably have a Michael Fassbender themed episode because The Killer's coming out. We're recording this on the 6th. It's coming out this weekend on Netflix.
Yeah, I plan to see it.
Yeah, so we can have a whole Fassbender day. But that'll wrap up this episode of Cinematary. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cinematary, at Twitter and hell the other one's called Twitter and Instagram handle at Cinematary, and on Letterboxd, letterboxd.com/Cinematary, where we list all the movies that we talked about in this episode. Thank you to our patrons over on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, whether it's $1, $5, $50, $6,000, whatever you're feeling one day.
Yeah, we need to start a $6,000 tier.
I'm going to create it. Why not? It's not like somebody has to be under it in order to create it. I'm going to make like $1 million one where it just says that we'll create
date your
flesh
son.
Controllers.
We'll
date your son.
All of us.
Yeah, we'll date your son for $1 million. Thank you to our patrons, Cam, Candace, and Ron Hayes, Teresa Marsathi, and Tyler Chandler. Thank you for supporting the show. Until next episode, keep. That's it.